Going through all of this, I still know that there's a plan for me. I'm still here for a reason.
Former child star Danielle Spencer, best known for playing Dee Thomas on What's Happening, has died.
Danielle Spencer is gone, and the last words she left behind have Hollywood shaking to its core. Hours before her sudden death, she dropped a cryptic message that has insiders whispering it was no accident at all.
It's Through the Fire, Journal of a Child Star. And it talks about me growing up in the industry and also about how later on in life when I had an illness.
They claim that message wasn't random, but a direct shot at someone, and it revealed things the public was never supposed to see.
Well, I had a car accident 2 years ago, and I had spinal surgery subsequently.
Was it her goodbye, a secret confession, or a warning so dangerous that somebody didn't want it out there? This isn't just another sad headline. Danielle Spencer's passing feels like a shockwave, the kind that makes you stop scrolling and say, wait, what just happened? The official story says she died on August 11th from gastric cancer and cardiac arrest at 60 years old.
News. We're talking about Danielle Spencer, who played little sister Dee on that hit 1970 sitcom What's Happening. She died Monday after a long battle with cancer.
But those who truly knew Danielle, who watched her struggles and her quiet battles, believe there's way more going on here. And the biggest clue, her final public words. Hours before slipping away, Danielle left a message that was nothing like the gentle goodbyes we've seen from others. No, hers was sharp, heavy, and clearly meant for someone to feel it. She wrote about truth, about unfinished conversations, and about stories that never get told because the wrong people are holding the pen. She didn't drop names, but everyone familiar with her past instantly knew who she was pointing at.
Going through all of this, I still know that there's a plan for me. I'm still here for a reason.
Danielle Spencer knew what it felt like to be invisible, maybe better than anyone in Hollywood. She first lit up TV screens as Dee Thomas in What's Happening, the quick-witted little sister whose sarcasm and side-eye became iconic. She shot 65 episodes of the original run and another 16 in What's Happening Now. The audience adored her, but the industry, they boxed her in, refusing to see her as anything more than that one role.
Well, I think it was a family show, and of course, you know, we had subject matter that everyone could relate to, so that's always good. And of course, the characters are so lovable, so.
For a young black actress in the 1970s, this wasn't just bad luck. It was almost guaranteed. Typecasting was the cage, and Danielle was trapped inside it. But then came the real heartbreak in 1977. Tragedy slammed into her life with no warning. A brutal car crash killed her stepfather and manager, Tim Pelt, and left Danielle with injuries that changed her forever. She was only a teenager when her career was suddenly ripped away. In a fair world, Hollywood would have rallied around her, lifted her up, and given her a second chance. But this is Hollywood, and instead of helping her, they pushed her to the sidelines like she never existed. No campaigns for a comeback, no push for new roles, just silence. She was erased before she even got the chance to grow into her talent, yet Danielle didn't vanish. She refused to play their game. She reinvented herself in the boldest way possible, a way Hollywood rarely forgives. She walked away. She chose school over stardom, earned a doctorate in veterinary medicine in 1993, and built a whole new life healing animals instead of chasing cameras. That move alone made her a threat, because in an industry built on control and dependency, Danielle proved she could stand on her own. But independence came with its own battles, and her journey was still far from easy. Danielle's life was a constant fight. She battled breast cancer, endured the lasting pain from that horrific car accident, and carried the weight of being frozen in time. Remembered almost only as a child star while her real-life victories were ignored. Friends say she handled it all with grace, but even they admit she noticed. In one of her last big interviews, she reflected on the surreal honor of seeing What's Happening immortalized in the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. She smiled, she was proud, she gave gratitude, but behind that smile was something bittersweet. The recognition came decades too late, only after Hollywood had already slammed the door on her career.
To the room, there were about 5 doctors in there, so that scared the living daylights out of me. And they told me that I had breast cancer.
And that's exactly why her final message hits like a haunting echo. When she wrote about Unfinished Conversations, fans thought she might be speaking about her personal life. But those who knew her best believed it was way bigger than that, a call out to the system itself. They say she was pointing at a story too many already know, how black talent, especially black women, are left unprotected, underpaid, and erased until the public only remembers a tiny sliver of who they really were. That's the wound she carried, and the truth she hinted at in her last words. Danielle was never one to stir public drama. She wasn't messy, she wasn't loud, but she was a quiet truth teller. You saw it in her advocacy for animals, in the way she spoke honestly about her health battles, and in how she stayed real with her fans, without ever pretending Hollywood treated her fairly.
Hi, I'm Dr. Danielle Spencer Fields, and you've got compassionate animal care.
After her passing, tributes poured in from all corners, fans, co-stars, and family. Her younger brother, jazz musician Jeremy Pelt, broke hearts with his tribute, calling her a loving spirit and protector who somehow stayed positive even in her darkest days. Her brother shared the most gut-wrenching detail of all. He was right there when Danielle took her last breath. He called it both an honor and a heartbreak, words that crushed fans who already felt the loss so deeply. The "What's Happening?" The cast remembered her quick wit and warmth, while social media lit up with clips of Dee Thomas firing off those iconic one-liners. But beneath all that love, you could feel the unspoken anger. Danielle deserved more. More roles, more recognition, more years. And maybe that's what her final words were really about. Not just her own life, but a pattern bigger than Hollywood dares to admit. Because let's be real, this is a story we've seen again and again. Legendary black talent who get overlooked, underpaid, and pushed to the sidelines, only to be celebrated once they're gone. From music to movies to sports, the list is endless. Artists erased while alive, only to be praised when it was too late for them to feel it. Danielle saw that cycle. She lived it. And if her final message means what some believe, she wasn't afraid to call it out one last time. In her later years, Danielle lived quietly in Virginia with her mother, surrounded by the animals she adored. She stayed away from the cameras and the noise, but don't think for a second she wasn't fully aware of the forces that shaped her life. She knew exactly how the industry treated her, and she never forgot it.
I thought, why do it on one and not the other when it's more than likely going to?
That's why her last message doesn't just read like a goodbye. It feels like a challenge, a dare, maybe even a warning. Danielle Spencer wasn't just Dee from What's Happening. She was a survivor, a healer, and a woman who refused to let Hollywood write her story. And maybe, just maybe, those last words were her way of making sure we never forget it. If you really want to grasp the weight of her story and the power of that haunting message, you have to rewind it all the way back to the set of a groundbreaking show that changed television forever. And that show didn't just change TV, it changed Danielle Spencer's life forever. What's Happening wasn't just another sitcom when it hit ABC from 1976 to 1979. It was a cultural breakthrough, one of the very first American series to put the everyday lives of black teenagers at the center of the story. Inspired by Eric Monte's 1975 film Cooley High, it arrived at the same moment that black sitcoms like Sanford and Son and Good Times, also co-created by Monte, were finally breaking into the mainstream.
Until a person is finished talking on the telephone, and then you say very nicely, "Is mama?"
For millions of viewers, this was the first time they saw themselves on screen without their stories being filtered through a white lens. It was bold, it was raw, and it was overdue. The show followed Roger, Raj Thomas, Ernest Thomas, Freddie Rerun Stubbs, Fred Berry, and Dwayne Nelson, Haywood Nelson, as they navigated teenage life in Los Angeles. And then came the scene stealer no one expected. Dee, Raj's little sister, played by a young Danielle Spencer. With her razor-sharp wit and perfectly timed one-liners, Dee could shut someone down with nothing but a glare or a savage punchline.
Hey, Raj, how you doing? Hey, Raj, what's happening? Smells like it already happened.
She wasn't just comic relief. She was unforgettable. Across 65 episodes of the original run and 16 more in the reboot What's Happening Now, Danielle's performance cemented her as the heart of the show. Fans couldn't get enough, and yet Hollywood never figured out what to do with her brilliance. And here's the kicker. There was no blueprint for her. Danielle herself told Jet magazine back in 2014, "I had never seen any young black girl in that type of spotlight. So I didn't have a reference point in the media as to how to deal with this opportunity. I was from the Bronx. What I did was use my own family as the reference on how to portray my character. That realness, that authenticity is what made her shine. Fans couldn't get enough of her. Danielle's catchphrase, "Ooh, I'm telling mama," became pure TV history, a line that strangers would shout at her for decades after the show ended. It followed her everywhere, a reminder of the role that made her a household name. But Hollywood is ruthless, and history proves it again and again. Being part of something groundbreaking doesn't guarantee protection, fair treatment, or even a future. And for Danielle, that's exactly when her story started to twist. Her wit on what's happening was so sharp, so natural, that fans swore she had to be just like Dee in real life. Danielle laughed about it, saying, "I chuckle because everyone thinks it's original, so I have to act like it's new every time." But here's the shocker. Danielle almost never became Dee at all. In a 2016 interview with a Richmond CBS affiliate, she revealed she actually didn't get the part after her first audition. A month later, though, the phone rang. "Pack your bags. You're heading to Los Angeles." For a girl from the Bronx, that wasn't just a career break. It was a cultural earthquake. The character she was handed was bold, fearless, and brutally honest. A little sister who could go toe-to-toe with the boys and come out on top. Danielle admitted that wasn't entirely who she was off camera. "I did not have an older brother," she explained. "However, I had a lot of pent-up sassiness because I wanted to be like that, and I had an excuse. So why not? That sass came naturally, even if it was partly a performance." Born June 24th, 1965 in the Bronx, Danielle Louise Spencer grew up with her father, James Spencer, a civil servant, and her mother, Cheryl Spencer, a school teacher. Acting wasn't in the family playbook, but for Danielle, the pull was undeniable. By the time she was 8, she was already taking acting classes, instantly hooked on memorizing lines, trying on makeup, and slipping into the skin of someone else. Acting, she later told Jet Magazine, was therapeutic. You are able to relate to your characters and figure out what makes them tick while also infusing your own personality. That mix of realness and performance is what made her unforgettable, and it's why Dee Thomas became one of the most iconic little sisters in sitcom history. When What's Happening Now ended in 1988, Danielle took a turn almost nobody saw coming. She walked away from the cameras and went back to school, first earning a degree in marine biology from UCLA before moving on to Tuskegee University in Alabama, where she earned her doctorate in veterinary medicine in 1993. Her true passion wasn't fame, it was animals. She said that love went back as far as she could remember. Ever since I was 5 years old, I can recall bringing my first pet home to my mom, she shared in a 2012 interview. She's like, "What is this?" I'm saying, "You have to keep the pet. You can't throw it out." And I'm screaming and crying. And she let me. That stubborn little girl grew into a woman who made veterinary care her calling. A career that lasted decades, long after Hollywood stopped calling her phone. And yet, life still pulled her back to the screen at least once. In 1997, she appeared in As Good as It Gets, fittingly as a veterinarian. But behind the achievements in the second career, her story carried scars from tragedy that could have ended her life before she ever had the chance to see it unfold. During production of What's Happening's second season, Danielle and her stepfather manager, Tim Pelt, were in a horrific car crash. Tim was killed instantly, while Danielle was left with a broken pelvis, shattered limbs, and in a coma for 3 weeks.
I had a car accident 2 years ago, and I had spinal surgery subsequently.
Doctors doubted she'd make it, but she did. And not only did she survive, she came back stronger, pushing herself to return for the show's final season, carrying her grief like a shadow, but also her strength like armor. Danielle never forgot the two people who gave her the courage to keep going, Tim and her mother, Cheryl Pelt. She credited them as the guiding forces who believed in her talent and protected her as much as they could. But Hollywood didn't protect her. It almost never does. And that's why decades later, when Danielle left behind that chilling final message about unfinished conversations and the wrong people holding the pen, it hit harder than anyone expected. It's impossible not to hear the echoes of Danielle's early years when you look at how her life unfolded, the twists, the hidden battles, and the quiet erasure that followed. But the scars from that 1977 crash didn't stay buried in the past. They came roaring back nearly 2 decades later. In 2004, Danielle was hit with spinal stenosis, a narrowing of the spine so severe it left her on the brink of paralysis. Doctors traced it directly back to that same car accident that nearly killed her as a teenager. And just when she managed to push through that pain, another storm came. In 2014, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She went through a double mastectomy, leaning on her family for strength while enduring the fear, the surgeries, and the long road to recovery. But behind the brave face, Danielle revealed just how heavy the darkness had become. In a 2016 interview on the Oprah Winfrey Network, she admitted something chilling. "They didn't want me to think of suicide, even though I had considered it." That raw confession showed the world the truth. She wasn't just carrying physical pain, but the crushing emotional toll of it all. And then, in 2018, yet another blow: emergency brain surgery. For most people, this kind of relentless suffering would have broken them completely, but Danielle refused to let it define her. She kept moving forward, fighting, living, determined not to be remembered only for her pain.
And that's what I had to think of, that, what I'm going through is for someone else, not for me.
And in the middle of all that chaos, she received the highest honor of her career. In 2016, she was inducted into the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. For someone Hollywood had all but erased, it was vindication, proof that her legacy mattered, and a permanent reminder of her place in Black television history. "I still can't believe it," she told Black America Web. "That's something people can look at for years to come, long after I'm gone." And now, those words hit different, almost like she knew her time would be shorter than anyone realized. Looking back at her final message, the one about truth, unfinished conversations, and the wrong people holding the pen, it feels less like a goodbye and more like a warning the world still hasn't fully understood. The more you look, the more the pattern reveals itself. Danielle's last words weren't just nostalgia or quiet reflection. They read like a coded warning, a warning from someone who had endured tragedy, illness, erasure, and betrayal, someone celebrated in museums but forced to fight most of her battles far away from the spotlight. And now she's gone. But the meaning behind those haunting words isn't fading anytime soon. On screen, Danielle Spencer's Dee Thomas was unforgettable, the ultimate little sister. She was sharper, wiser, and deadlier with her delivery than the boys around her. With just one icy stare or a perfectly timed one-liner, she could deflate Raj, Dwayne, and Rerun in seconds flat. And then came the catchphrase that became part of TV history: "Ooh, I'm gonna tell mama," a line that cemented her as sitcom royalty. Set in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles, What's Happening wasn't just about laughs, it was groundbreaking. Inspired by Cooley High, it became one of the first network shows to put the lives of Black teenagers at the center. It captured a cultural moment, giving visibility to voices and stories television had long ignored. And Danielle, as Dee, was right there at the heart of it. But she didn't stop there. Danielle reinvented herself completely. After studying at UC Davis and UCLA, she went on to Tuskegee University, where she earned her veterinary degree in 1993. She dedicated her life to animals, not just healing them, but fighting for them. She used her voice to advocate for causes that rarely make headlines, proving her passion for truth stretched far beyond Hollywood. And in a poetic twist, when she briefly returned to the screen in 1997's As Good as It Gets, she played a veterinarian, merging both halves of her life into one role. When news of her death broke, her What's Happening family mourned deeply. Haywood Nelson called her a brilliant, loving, positive, pragmatic warrior and a shero whose strength inspired those who knew her. Words that now feel heavier than ever, knowing what she left behind in her final message. He honored not just the actress, but the healer, the advocate, and the fighter who faced cancer and every other battle with the same quiet determination she carried her whole life.
Miss Collins, can I talk to these two alone for a minute, please? Of course. Thank you. I'll be right outside.
But for fans who keep circling back to her final message, those tributes only make the questions louder. How could someone so celebrated in death have been so ignored in life? And why did her last words sound less like a gentle goodbye and more like a sharp warning? Danielle Spencer's final public message now reads like a riddle wrapped in heartbreak. At first glance, it might have seemed harmless, maybe even hopeful, but in the shadow of her passing, it hits different. It feels sharper, like something she wanted the world to decode after she was gone. And that's exactly where the unease begins. Danielle wasn't some forgotten footnote. She was a cultural marker, a face forever tied to a groundbreaking moment in Black television history. She survived tragedy after tragedy, fought through medical battles that would have crushed anyone else, and still carried herself with humor, grace, and quiet defiance. She had seen Hollywood's spotlight and its shadows. She knew better than anyone how quickly the light could fade. And her last words weren't shouted from a stage or scripted for a final goodbye. They were tucked into an interview years ago, almost like she wanted them to outlive her. Now they do. And they raise questions nobody seems able to answer. Was she simply reflecting on her life? Or was she trying to tell us something the cameras were never allowed to capture? Because when you study the timing, the tone, and what was really happening in her life, her last words don't just inspire, they unsettle. And maybe, just maybe, that's what she wanted all along. For us to stop, to think, and to realize the truth doesn't always come with closure. What do you think Danielle Spencer was really trying to tell us? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, and we'll see you on the next one.